Welcome back to the channel. Have you been on a constant treadmill trying to heal an illness that you've been diagnosed with? Maybe you're going to and from your doctors, seeing specialists, getting all kinds of drugs, and no matter what you do, it seems like nothing is helping you heal. And in this video, I'm going to give you 5 kind of concepts, 5 myths that come from our ancient tribal minds, which keep us trapped where we are today and don't let us heal. So with that being said, let's get right into the video. I've been reading a book by Carolyne Myss that was actually given to me by my grandfather, and she specializes in studying ancient history, ancient yogic wisdom, and applying it to modern healing. And a lot of her book explains why people can't heal and how they can. And reading this book, I also came, many experiences dealing with patients over the years came up, and I'm going to weave these stories into this video as well, and also share some of my own experiences healing through, healing through many modalities for PTSD. But with that being said, let's get right into it here. Number 1, illness is long and painful. This is something a lot of people assume just because of the environment that we have around general Western health here, in the West, where we believe that you must climb up this long, hard hill. If you got diagnosed with cancer, you got diagnosed with, whatever it may be, these diseases that have some sort of a, some sort of a collective conscious thinking that these things don't go away immediately and you must fight a long, hard battle to actually get rid of them. This is actually a myth, and this is something outlined in the book, and also something I've seen through other patients dealing, being a paramedic for so long. I remember seeing some patients, I used to do transfers and take patients from one cancer ward to the other, and it was really interesting seeing the patterns that would emerge between people's mindsets and how they would heal. And one of the things that I noticed was when people were first diagnosed, their initial reaction to what lays ahead, what I'm going to call the adventure, but what many people call the battle that lays ahead, is going to be long and hard. And they already have this presumption that it's going to be a long, hard battle. And it really can be hard on your psyche and can be disempowering to you to make yourself feel that you're up against this long, hard battle. And it kind of sets the frame, right? Our stories write themselves. Carolyne herself says, our biographies are our biology. And I love that saying because it's like the way we speak about ourselves, the way we speak about our illnesses and our wounds will actually subconsciously allow us to program the path that lays ahead, whether that be something that is super quick and intense or something that's going to be long and drawn out and obviously incredibly painful if you're going through that. Number 2, serious illness cannot be healed. There are so many cases of illness, of people going to these cancer wards, going to the hospital, being diagnosed and, by what they call a palliative disease, meaning it is a disease that is going to kill you eventually. It's just a matter of time. And so the story or the narrative around these diseases, the story that's even framed around a lot of these diseases by Western medicine and doctors, is that you're not going to heal. That's completely off the table, right? That's going to be a miracle, and it's maybe even not worth your time to focus on that. Now that's how it's framed, right? But how many times have I seen somebody who had the minds, who didn't believe the doctors? Oftentimes these are very stubborn people who, they don't want to hear someone's telling them that they can't do something. And they'll go out of their way to find the solutions, be solutions focused, and will actually heal these diseases, and only for the doctors to be awestruck and find out that these people have actually healed their illness. So that is something to keep in mind there, is that any illness, any illness can be healed because our bodies actually have everything that they need in them. We're not just physical manifestations. We're not just physical beings here. There's an energetic layer. There's many different planes of existence that you exist in. And by acknowledging all of them, you can actually realize that there's a whole manifestation community about manifesting wealth and bringing physical items into your life. Well, disease also has many other components as well. There's a physical component, there's emotional, there's spiritual, there's mental. All these different planes of existence and the way you think of your disease will, allow you, really any disease can be healed. And there's evidence of every disease that can be healed, including some of the worst ones, honestly, HIV, some very, very aggressive cancers I've seen be healed, actually, not even remission, but just never come back. But it all came down to the mindset of the person and the story that they were telling themselves, instead of buying into the story that was being sold to them by their doctors. Number 3, only chemical medicines are effective. And so, again, this comes from the tribal mind. And, I'm just going to take a quick minute to talk about the tribal mind here. We're moving through many different ages in history, right? In over the ages, we go through many different eras, you could call them. There was the initial era of Aries, which eventually transitioned to the era of Pisces. And each era was actually defined by certain ways of thinking and believing and behaving by human beings. Now, we haven't gone so far from our old tribal ways. We still hang on to many of the ways of thinking, that tribal mind. And what you see here, these 5 myths here, all come from the tribal mind. Think about when you first get diagnosed with a disease. This is something I used to see all the time, is somebody gets diagnosed with a disease, the whole family, all the friends, everybody comes around, and they all want to help. There's really good intention there to help that person, but oftentimes it comes from a place of worry. Tribal, every time I say tribal, think just worry, because the tribe tends to worry about itself and all its members to keep people healthy, right? And that's traditionally how we functioned, as a society up until today, where we need to actually make a transition to the individual mind. And that is really the difference. When you look at these 5 myths, that's really the difference between people who get stuck in these negative belief patterns that are almost fed to them, right? Fed to them by society, and fed to them in a way to convince them to believe that they will get better if they do these things. And it's just pure hope, because until you actually take your power into your own hands, your initiative into your own hands, and take on your own individual power, it can be really challenging to go through your healing process dealing with all these things that are actually coming from your external environment, friends, family, doctors, what have you. So we did only chemical medicines are effective. Did we do that? Number 3, only chemical medicines are effective. That is something that is going to be told to you by your doctors first and foremost, but also by friends and family. Again, the tribal mind, because they're concerned for your health, and they're going to say, "Oh, doctors, we put a lot of faith in our doctors." And the family, the community also put faith in doctors. And your friends and family say, make sure you take those pills, make sure you do this, make sure you listen to what your doctor's saying, because they want you to get better. But ultimately, this will not lead you to a path of healing, because again, you're abdicating your responsibility to the doctors, and a lot of these chemical medicines are not all that effective when it comes to long term. They're changing and switching out medications all the time when it comes to these very intense treatments. And obviously things are getting better over time, but there's other ways to integrate alternative medicines, alternative ways of healing, holistic methods, combining them with traditional Western medicine. I think that's the most powerful combo. Number 4, you are being punished, or karma. This is most people recognize this, whether you're religious, spiritual, non-spiritual. You will think of, I did something wrong. You're carrying guilt and shame. Again, that guilt and shame comes from the tribal way of thinking, collective guilt, right? We're all carrying guilt, we're all carrying shame together. And you may even think that your illness or disease is a punishment, that this is happening to you. And I will encourage you, if you're thinking this way, that there has to be a bit of a mindset shift, that things are actually happening for you, right? It can be really hard to look at something like a disease that's so negative and look at it and think, this disease is a result of my own actions. This disease is because I did something wrong. And illness can be incredibly transformative. Illness can be a vehicle for change. If you embrace it, if you actually want to go through the transformative process, and you'll come out a better person, a different person on the other side. You know, as they say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? So definitely not karma. It's something that you have taken on, on your own. Also, the tribal mind will make you sometimes believe that about yourself as well. Number 5, your doctor is responsible for your healing. I kind of touched on that already, but this is something that I realized during one of my transfers. There's a lady who was just diagnosed with, I believe it was pancreatic cancer, but it was a pretty aggressive type of cancer that she was diagnosed with. She started going through her treatments, going to the cancer clinic. I was responsible for transferring her to and from home every week. And progressively, I started to see that things were getting worse and worse and worse. And you could see she was getting more angry and more annoyed with her doctors, more blaming, more pointing at others, and it just starting to spiral. And I remember on one of these ambulance rides, one of these trips, I looked at her and I said, do you really want to beat this? If this is something you actually want to beat, instead of abdicating responsibility to all these doctors, you need to know that you gave it the best shot that you could possibly have given it. Think of what your illness symbolizes to you right now, and ultimately transform that into a symbol of change, into a symbol of healing. To actually view your illness as something that it's just an obstacle to be overcome. And once you have that mindset, I told her, once you have this mindset, you can actually be your own medicine. You can be your own doctor. And everybody around you, including these physicians, are going to be secondary support. You can take this, into your own hands. Anyway, we dropped her off. And then, again, saw her on another transfer. And she had actually done a large amount of research. She had seen a naturopath. She had integrated some other holistic things into her practice, and you could see just her taking, of course she hadn't had any visual improvement. There was no real improvement at that point, when she first made that change, but you could see just in taking on that responsibility for herself, being like, I own my body, I own my healing, and everybody around me is actually just secondary support instead of abdicating responsibility to others. You could see the joy and the empowerment on her face. You could see the willingness to keep moving forward because she was providing herself with her own hope instead of, looking to others to provide her with hope. So this is sort of the difference between the tribal mind and then taking things into your own hands as an individual. And we'll talk about in future videos how the individual can even move into a sort of symbolic sight and look at your problems, look at your illness as actually an opportunity to grow, an opportunity to transform, and an opportunity to maybe even let go of things that may have even contributed to this illness in the first place. I know illness for me with PTSD has been incredibly transformative. It's got me into sharing what I've learned along the way. It's ignited a passion within me that maybe I wouldn't have had if I hadn't gone through that whole process. And I had to leave things behind. I had to leave a whole career behind. I had to leave friends behind. I had to leave all kinds of things behind, with that old career. So I could go through an incredibly transformative process, but it didn't happen overnight. And I had to acknowledge that I had to detach from the tribal mind. There's definitely a period of 4 to 6 months when I first was going through my mental health challenges that I didn't really talk to anybody. And, even my close friends, I'd sort of let them know that I'd be a little bit more distant. In the long run, I did have some support around me, but in the end, it was detaching from the tribal mind and removing myself from these 5 myths that actually empowered me to overcome and, be who I am today. And time and again, every illness or injury that I've experienced, this is the sort of mindset I've applied to it. and it's been incredibly effective. So try it out for yourself. Until next time,
Peace.